Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War. 1 week away from one of the biggest battles of all of the war, Fredericksburg. But first, before we get to that, we got Cane Hill and Prairie Grove, both of them in Arkansas. Then we got Hartsville. Don't know where that is. We'll get there for the last battle of the episode. But we got familiar Earl Van Dorn, Sterling Price on the Confederate side, battling over on Schofield. And I think James Blunt we had last episode as well. So we're back still in this little area over here. Battle of Cane Hill coming up first, November 28th, 1862, northwestern Arkansas, near the town of Cane Hill, clearly. After driving a Confederate army commanded by Earl Van Dorn and Sterling Price from northwestern Arkansas in 1862 at the Battle of Pea Ridge, which we did, Union General Samuel R. Curtis was promoted to Major General and assigned to command the Department of the Missouri.
All right.
Curtis replaced John M. Schofield. October of the same year, Curtis formed a new army named the Army of the Frontier and appointed Schofield to command that. Schofield's new army was composed of 3 divisions commanded by James G. Blunt, yo beautiful, James Totten, and Francis J. Huron. Opposing Schofield was the command of Confederate Thomas Hinman. Heard of this guy as well?
Look at that. May 31st, 1862, Memorial Day. No.
No.
No. Sorry, guys. May 31st, 1862. Hinman had been assigned to command the Trans-Mississippi Department.
Uh-oh.
He was later relieved of command because his strict control of the region angered prominent Arkansas civilians.
Oh, too bad.
Like, this dude is like Hitler. And they're like, who's that? Hinman was replaced by Theophilus Holmes. Despite his replacement as department commander, Hinman retained a field command and formed a serviceable army out of the scattered Confederate troops in the region. Early November, Herron's and Totten's division were stationed near Springfield, Missouri, while Blunt's division was south of Bentonville, Arkansas. The Confederate cavalry force under Emmett McDonald had reached Cane Hill, Arkansas. Blunt was informed of McDonald's presence and sent a small force under Colonel William F. Cloud to confront McDonald. After a brief clash, McDonald's horsemen retreated.
The horsemen.
Yeah.
After Cloud's force left the area, Hinman sent Brigadier General John S. Marmaduke with 2,000 cavalrymen to reoccupy Cane Hill. Union intelligence soon learned of the movement, and they're like, what the fuck?
Right.
Cane Hill was a smaller plateau within the larger Ozark Plateau, and this high ground provided a position for Marmaduke to base his lines on. Once Marmaduke learned that Blunt was approaching his position, he prepared for battle and sent his supply train away towards relative safety. This is good.
What do you do, right? After learning that Marmaduke advanced to Cane Hill, Blunt moved south to confront him with 5,000 men. He's like, let's go. Mm-hmm. Marmaduke countered Blunt's advance by moving a brigade under Colonel Joseph O. Shelby, including Quantrill's Raiders. Hey. They moved them forward to block the road Marmaduke expected Blunt to advance down. In addition to Shelby's brigade, Marmaduke's force also contained a brigade commanded by, you guessed it, Colonel Charles Carroll.
Charles Carroll. However, Blunt approached along a different road than anticipated. Blunt approached along a different road than anticipated by the Confederates, creating an element of surprise.
You would think he would have, like, got any road.
Some of the roads, right?
Right, come on.
Well, a brief artillery duel segued into an infantry assault by Blunt's force, and Cloud's brigade as the spearhead doing the most damage. Okay. The initial Confederate position had to be abandoned.
Uh-oh.
Besides his numerical advantage, Blunt had a sizable advantage in material, contributing to the collapse of the Confederate line. Blunt had 30 cannons with his force, while Shelby had 4, and Carroll had an additional 2.
Oh, wow.
A substantial part of the Confederate force was also armed only with shotguns, while the Union had substantially better weapons in that area.
I wouldn't even fight.
Right.
It'd be stupid.
It's dumb.
The collapse of this initial Confederate position rendered the position of Carroll's brigade unsustainable, and Carroll's Arkansas cavalry fell back.
Yep.
Carroll's brigade in collapse, Shelby organized a rear guard in order to keep Blunt at bay until the Confederates could retreat to a better position. Shelby divided his force into small regiments, or segments, and then organized them in a successive line along the path of retreat. As Blunt pursued the retreating Confederates, the Union forces would run into one of Shelby's segments, which would hold Blunt's much stronger force off for as long as possible, you think?
All right.
Once each position became untenable, the segment would retreat, and Blunt would reach the next one. I mean, that might be work out.
Right.
This system worked
Slow 'em down at least. Right.
This system worked long enough to enable the Confederates to form a general secondary line. The broken nature of some of the ground the Union Army had to move over also slowed Blunt's pursuit.
Yeah. Right. Marmaduke's attempt to form a secondary line was abandoned after another brief artillery duel due to the fact that Blunt's cannons had a clear advantage over Marmaduke's, right?
Duh.
After falling back from that position, Marmaduke formed another defensive line at Reed's Mountain. Reed's Mountain, just give up, dude. Go away.
Right.
Reed's Mountain was a locally prominent height, noted for the lack of vegetation on its slopes, providing an open space where Marmaduke could better align his artillery.
Artillery.
Again, Union artillery fire wreaked havoc on the Confederate
Obviously.
line, although Blunt also ordered an infantry assault by the 11th Kansas and the 3rd Indian Home Guard.
All right.
The Confederates began to run out of ammunition for both their artillery and cavalry, and one of the Confederate cannons was damaged to the extent that it was no longer usable. The Confederates were forced to fall back from that position as well and were pursued by Blunt. Again, the broken nature of some of the ground along the path of the Confederate retreat slowed the Union pursuit. I would assume it would slow the Confederate retreat as well.
Right.
Eventually, darkness ended the fighting.
Oh, my God. It was like, please, just get dark.
Right.
The number of casualties incurred by each side are not known for certain. One historian places Blunt as suffering 8 men killed, 36 wounded, for a total of 44 casualties. And Marmaduke at 10 killed and a minimum of 70 wounded and missing, for a total of 80. However, other sources place Blunt casualties at a total of 41 and Marmaduke's at 45. Blunt claimed victory, although the escape Marmaduke's command in relatively good order allowed the Confederates to view the action as only a setback, but remained in the Cane Hill after the battle, while Marmaduke retreated to Van Buren.
Yeah, I think it was staying Cane Hill. While Blunt was encamped at Cane Hill after the battle, the Army of the Frontier's 2 other divisions, Tottens and Herons, were still in the Springfield area, roughly 100 miles away. Deep in enemy territory, Blunt had a tenuous supply line, and the distance to Springfield would mean that reinforcements would take some time to reach his position. With Blunt isolated, Hinman decided to move his army north to attack Blunt at Cane Hill before Huron could arrive with the other 2 Union divisions. However, Huron sent the 2 divisions on a hard march, and the Union reinforcements reached Blunt around the same time as Hinman's army did. This resulted in the Battle of Prairie Grove, which we'll have right after this one, in which the combined forces, and we'll get there. So, it leads right into the Battle of Prairie Grove. So, Blunt ain't done.
Blunt ain't done. He's still got about half of his shit to go. Significant portion of the battlefield, about 5,750 acres, was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1994 as the Cane Hill Battlefield. Arkansas Civil War Centennial Commission erected a highway marker near the battle site to interpret the fighting. In addition to the marker, a driving tour explaining the Cane Hill Battlefield has been developed. Oh, look at that, a tour. These Arkansans really love the Cane Hill Battle, huh?
That moves on to the Battle of Prairie Grove, which we already know is about to happen here. While tactically indecisive, this battle would secure the Union control of northwestern Arkansas for good. March 1862, we already know that. Battle of Pea Ridge.
Yep.
And then we came here, and then we had the battle of the last battle we just had, Cane Hill. Wait.
Yep, all that been done.
Well, following Pea Ridge, Curtis, who was Samuel Curtis, drove further into Arkansas and planned to attack Memphis, but was ordered by Henry Halleck to send half of his force to Cape Girardeau for transfer to Tennessee.
The Union's like, we need to go to Tennessee, boys.
Right.
Curtis complied, forced to abandon his plan, instead heading towards Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, Little Rock.
After the defeat in a small action near Searcy, Curtis decided that his supply line was vulnerable and fell back, eventually reaching Helena. September, Curtis was assigned to command the Department of the Mizzou, replacing his previous commander, John Schofield.
Right.
Curtis also later formed the Army of Frontier,
Right.
appointing Schofield to command of that army.
He did.
However,
Right.
20th November, Schofield was forced to give up command of the army due to medical issues. Command passed to Brigadier General Blunt.
Yes, it did.
At the time Schofield's relinquishment of command, Blunt's division was in Arkansas, while the rest of the Army of the Frontier was stationed near Wilson's Creek, Mizzou, where a battle had been fought the year before.
All right, good for them. Confederate commander in the region, Thomas C. Hinman, had previously commanded the Yes, we know this. Prominent Arkansas civilians didn't want him there, so Theophilus Holmes took over. Yeah, then we had Cane Hill after that, and then the beginning of the Prairie Grove campaign, the Union Army of the Frontier was commanded by Schofield. Yes.
Right.
Schofield's army was divided into 3 divisions, which we know was Blunt, Totten, and Herron.
Right.
Blunt's division was known as the Kansas Division.
Nice.
As many of the soldiers in the division were from Kansas.
I think so.
The division also contained sizable numbers of African American and Native American soldiers.
No shit.
Which made Blunt's division unique among Union units in 1862.
Wow.
I would say. Totten's and Heron's divisions were both known as Missouri Division and contained men from Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, and Indiana.
Huh.
The division also contained a regiment of Arkansas cavalrymen who had remained loyal to the Union despite the secession of Arkansas.
No shit. The Confederate Army present at Prairie Grove was the 1st Corps, Trans-Mississippi Army, commanded by Hinman.
Right.
Hinman's command was formed by 4 divisions, 1 of cavalry, 2 infantry, and mixed reserve division, and a mix. The cavalry division consisted of men from Arkansas, Texas, and Confederate Missouri, and was commanded by Marmaduke. Marmaduke's division was poorly armed.
Yes, we know that.
Of the Army's 2 infantry divisions, one was commanded by Daniel M. Frost, and the other, Francis Shoup. Shoup's division consisted of Arkansans infantrymen, and Frost's division was mostly Missourians, although some Arkansans troops were included.
Right. The reserve division was commanded by John S. Roan and was poorly equipped, organized, and led. Holmes stated that Roan was useless as a commander. So why is he commanding?
Right.
Of Hinman and his division commanders, all had previous military experience. Okay, in particular, Hinman, Frost, and Roan had all seen action in the Mexican War.
Oh.
Well, can't be too useless as a commander if he's been there since the Mexican War there, buddy.
Right. After the Battle of Cane Hill, Hinman decided to send his entire army towards Cane Hill in order to assault Blunt.
Right.
Following, according to Hinman's plan, he would be able to assault Blunt's position from both the front and along the flanks. At this time, Union forces menaced the Confederate stronghold of Vicksburg, Mississippi. November 11th, Confederate government ordered Holmes to send 10,000 troops to reinforce Vicksburg. Holmes replied that 2/3 of his troops were in northwest Arkansas to oppose a federal threat. Even so, he ordered Hinman to bring his troops to Little Rock. He's like, no, you bring those sons of bitches to Little Rock.
Holmes tried to dissuade Hinman from his plan to attack Blunt, and the two generals engaged in an argument over the telegraph. Hinman,
Can you imagine
arguing over a telegraph? Hinman had you're just waiting for a reply 3 days later. You motherfucker.
What the hell are you arguing about?
Oh, yeah. Right. Hinman had a forceful personality and won the argument with Holmes. By December 1st, Hinman had gathered 12,000 troops near Van Buren. The Confederate infantry and artillery moved out of their camps on December 3rd. Blunt's intelligence services alerted to Hinman's preparations by the evening of December 2nd. A carrier immediately set out for the telegraph station at Elkhorn Tavern. The messages included a situation report for Curtis in St. Louis and an urgent request for Totten to send reinforcements.
Blunt prepared to defend himself by posting William Weir's 2nd Brigade and William Cloud's 3rd Brigade on high ground south of Newburgh, with elements of Frederick Salamon's 1st Brigade watching Hogeye Road. A cavalry outpost was set up on Cove Creek Road to watch for Hinman's advance. Every morning from December 3rd to the 6th, Blunt and his troops on the alert, with wagons packed and ready to move quickly.
Well, we go back to November 27th, when Curtis ordered Totten back to St. Louis to be a witness at a court-martial. Why? The unpopular Totten's departure pleased his soldiers, and they didn't like Totten, and Daniel Houston Jr. assumed command of the 2nd Division.
Nice.
Within a few hours of receiving Blunt's telegraph call for help, Heron started the 2nd and 3rd Divisions on an epic of human endurance.
Oh, shit.
He said, wait, we're running, motherfuckers.
We gotta go.
From the afternoon of December 3rd to the morning of December 7th, Houston and Heron's division marched 105 and 120 miles respectively.
Oh, my goodness.
Heron's 2 divisions averaged 30 miles a day over rough roads and intensely cold weather with short stops to eat and sleep.
Oh, my.
In the early hours of December 6th, Heron received a message from Blunt asking for cavalry. Heron promptly dispatched Dudley Wickersham with a 1,600-man provisional cavalry brigade, which reached Blunt at 9 p.m. that same day after a 35-mile march.
Damn.
Yeah, these motherfuckers moving quick.
And then they want them to fight if possible? Oh, my.
They're going to fight.
December 5th, Joseph Shelby's 1,200-man Confederate Cavalry Brigade began pressing back the 400 troops of the 2nd Kansas Volunteer Cavalry Regiment that guarded the Cove Creek Road. Blunt knew that if Hinman continued to use Cove Creek Road, it would be easy for him to cut off the Confederate retreat route.
All right.
Blunt assumed correctly that Hinman intended to turn to the west and approach Newburgh. However, Hinman's plan would change. The bad weather slowed down the march of Hinman's soldiers. He postponed his planned attack until the 7th of December.
Well, good for Blunt, because his men ain't there yet.
He believed that the nearest Union forces were near Springfield, but what he did not know was that Blunt anticipated the Confederate offensive and the Union reinforcements were approaching.
Sure the fuck were. December 6th, near midday, the 2nd Kansas Cavalry abandoned its blocking position on Cove Creek Road and withdrew northwest toward Newburgh. That afternoon, James C. Monroe's Confederate Cavalry Brigade, supported by other units, skirmished with the 2nd Kansas Cavalry on Reed's Mountain. By nightfall, Monroe's troopers occupied that terrain feature on the road to Newburgh. That evening, Hinman and his commanders received startling intelligence that Huron's 2 divisions would reach Blunt the following day. He's like, fuck!
Right.
Hinman realized that attacking Blunt at Newburgh would simply push him back towards Huron's reinforcements.
Exactly.
Yep. Better go now, bud. Just get out of there.
Yep. The Confederate commander knew that marching back to Van Buren would demoralize his soldiers, so he changed his plan.
He's like, hey, guys, you want to go fight and maybe die, or you want to live?
Right.
I don't think it would demoralize them at all.
Hinman's new plan called for the army to march north on Cove Creek Road to Prairie Grove. At that location, he would first crush Huron's force,
good
then
thinking.
swing around and smash Blunt.
Jeez.
Nice. The risk
Crush!
Right, the risk was that Hinman might be caught between the 2 Union forces if Blunt found out what was happening. 4 a.m. on December 7th, the Confederate Army began to march north along Cove Creek Road.
Well, early December 7th, Marmaduke's 2,000 cavalrymen reached Prairie Grove and discovered 650 Union troopers of the 6th Missouri and 7th Missouri Volunteer Cavalry regiments nearby. Helped by the fact that many Confederates wore captured blue uniforms, Shelby's troopers surprised and routed their opponents, right?
All right.
The Union 1st Arkansas Cavalry Regiment soon appeared on the Fayetteville Road and was also routed when the Missourians fled through their ranks and Shelby's Confederates charged into them. What the hell's going on here, Union?
Wow. The Confederate pursuit continued east past the Illinois River, but it ended when it encountered the leading elements of Huron's main
Yeah, I
column.
bet it did. They're like, whoa.
Shelby was briefly captured, then rescued during a melee with the 1st Missouri Volunteer Cavalry.
Oh, damn.
During the early morning action, Marmaduke's horsemen inflicted casualties of 10 killed, 19 wounded, 262 captured on Union cavalry, and sieged 21 wagons. Wow. Huron's approaching infantry ignored the panicked Union horsemen, and its bold front convinced Marmaduke to pull back to the west side of the river. By the time Frost's 6,300-strong division reached Prairie Grove, Hinman had lost his nerve.
Of course it is. He's like, nope.
The Confederate commander might have attacked Huron at once with Frost's powerful division.
Right. Why didn't he?
Right.
He's got 6,300 men that just came for him. Fearing that Blunt might intervene, Hinman ordered Frost to face southwest and block the Fayetteville Road. While Hinman waited for Shoup's Arkansas division, Huron had time to push Marmaduke out of his way and reach the Illinois River. When Shoup's 3,200 soldiers arrived at about 10 a.m., Shoup assumed a defensive position on the high ground at Prairie Grove. After directing the deployment of Frost's troops, Hinman returned to Prairie Grove. He scolded Shoup for not attacking Huron, but allowed the Arkansas soldiers to remain in position.
When Hinman's army started north on Cove Creek Road, Monroe's 400 Confederate horsemen were left at Reed's Mountain to deceive Blunt. In the early morning, Union officers detected Hinman's column marching along the Cove Creek Road. You're fucked.
Right.
This information was reported to Union headquarters, but Blunt was not there, and a critical message was not forwarded for 2 hours. About 9 a.m., Blunt was at Newburgh, expecting to be attacked, when he finally realized that Hinman's army was no longer there. By 10 a.m., Blunt had gotten his division marching north on Fayetteville Road. Blunt sent William R. Judson with 400 cavalry and 2 M1841 mountain howitzers up the Cove Creek Road. Judson's column got within half a mile of the Prairie Grove and fired its howitzers for 30 minutes, but withdrew when confronted by superior forces.
All right. Wickersham's Provisional Cavalry Brigade led Blunt's column as it hurried north on the Fayetteville Road. Believing that Ray's Mill was his destination, Wickersham turned his brigade on to Bottom Road. By the time Blunt realized what had happened, his division was marching toward Ray's Mill. Wickersham's mistake turned out to Blunt's advantage because it brought his division to the battlefield by the least obstructed route.
Oh, shit.
By 1 p.m., Blunt's division reached Ray's Mill where the soldiers rested. A half hour later, Wickersham headed east on the Viney Grove Road towards Prairie Grove, where the thunder of cannon was heard. Salomon's brigade stayed at Ray's Mill, guarding the wagon train. By 2:30 p.m., the infantry followed the cavalry. Since the countryside was flat, the different regiments spontaneously quit the road and set out cross-country at a rapid pace. They're like, let's go through these fields, boys.
You ain't getting. 7th of December, Confederate divisions of Shoup and Marmaduke aligned along the length of Prairie Grove. Later that morning, Huron's Union division reached the field, and, not suspecting that he faced a substantial portion of the Confederate army, opened up an artillery bombardment. Huron was soon joined by Houston's division, and Huron and Houston had fully deployed their troops. Huron reopened their artillery barrage, which had paused earlier. The Confederate artillery attempted to respond, but their cannons were all of inferior quality. Why even have that shit if it don't work?
Right.
Just like supposed to scare them or something. and lacked the range to properly respond, as they're terrible. They didn't even fire half the time. They only can shoot 10 feet. In addition, the Confederates were also short of artillery ammo. As a result, the Union gunners were able to wreak havoc in the Confederate line. So stupid.
Confident after watching the result of the artillery bombardment, Huron sent his 2 brigades, commanded by Colonel William W. Orme and Lieutenant Colonel Henry Bertram, towards the Confederate line near a farm owned by Archibald Borden. Huron's troops made contact with the main Confederate line, and the 20th Wisconsin Infantry Regiment and the 19th Iowa Infantry Regiment overran a Confederate artillery battery. However, counterattacked by elements from the brigades of James F. Fagan and Dandridge McRae, both of Shoup's Confederate division, drove off the Wisconsin unit, and Brigade Commander Bertram was wounded.
Look at that shit.
After the repulse of Bertram's attack, some of Orme's men joined in the fight, only to be driven off as well. An abortive Confederate counterattack was then driven off by Huron's artillery.
So they're going back and forth, man.
The 2 Union regiments that were the hardest engaged, Bertram's 20th Wisconsin and Orme's 19th Iowa, both suffered losses of approximately 50%.
Oh, shit.
Damn.
After the defeat of Herron's division, Houston deployed some of his men into the fray. 26th Indiana attacked Marmaduke's Confederate cavalry and were driven off by a force that included Shelby's brigade and Quantrill's raiders. Houston ordered the 37th Illinois to charge towards the Borden House, and the Illinois soldiers experienced initial success. However, a Confederate counterattack drove the 37th Illinois back to the main Union line.
Jeez.
Fagan and Shelby led their men further on towards Herron's main line, and the 2 brigades were joined by a 3rd under Emmett McDonald. This attack was also defeated, as the combined fire of Herron's artillery and the survivors of Orme's brigade broke the Confederate assault. Dude, the artillery is what's doing it. Mm-hmm. Man.
Well, Wickersham's 1,600 Union cavalry reached the battlefield, followed at 3:15 by Blunt with his staff and escort. A messenger from Blunt soon alerted Huron that his division was coming. As the news spread, Huron's men gave a cheer. Blunt opened fire on the Confederate army with 30 cannons. Hinman responded by ordering Frost to use his division to counter Blunt. Frost, in turn, sent a brigade commanded by Mosby M. Parsons to the left of Shoup's position. A brigade of dismounted Texas cavalry from Roan's command was also sent to the front, forming to the line of Parsons' brigade.
The Confederate, they can't do anything with the artillery. It's just blown to pieces, man.
Yeah, but they're getting...
hand-to-hand combat and all that shit they're winning out on, but, man... The Union's like, all right, that's fine. We'll be back about 250 yards and just blow you guys to fucking pieces.
Go ahead. Try to run at us.
Right. That's why I don't understand why the Confederates even wasted ammo. Knowing shotgun, that's 50, 60 yards. And that's not even reliable, 50, 60 yards. You want to shoot that bitch at like 10, 15. And their little howitzers that they had, what? Maybe 150 yards they can go?
Probably. And if they even fired that far.
Right. Jeez. Blunt's forces then prepared to attack the new Confederate left, strengthened by the addition of the 20th Iowa, one of Houston's Union regiments. 20th Iowa and the 1st Indian Home Guard assaulted the Confederate line, only to be repulsed. Yeah, you guys bought a bunch of the Iowans. Come on now.
Right.
The Confederates responded to a abortive Union line. Nope. The Confederates responded to the abortive Union assault with another counterattack using several of McRae's brigade. Further down the line, Weir's Union brigade began advancing towards Parsons' line. In response, Parsons moved his brigade forward from his original position, creating a confused fight between the 2 armies' main lines. Like, what the hell is this? I've never seen this before. Eventually, Parsons realized that his line was longer than Weir's and pushed hard on both flanks of the Union position. Weir was forced to retreat, and Parsons began a counterattack. Look at that shit.
All right, well, this attack was driven off by Blunt's massed artillery.
Of course.
As darkness fell, both sides gradually disengaged. While Hinman still held the field, he had no reinforcements and was running out of ammo. Meanwhile, the Union armies had been reinforced by trailing elements of Huron's command. But the Confederate army was forced to withdraw from the field, suffering many losses to desertion in the process. Man, these people are like, fuck this. Right. While the fighting was inconclusive, the Confederate withdrawal gave the Union a strategic victory.
Did. Union forces reported 1,251 casualties, including 175 dead, 813 wounded, 263 missing. Confederates are like, well, we had 1,317 casualties, 164 dead, 817 wounded, 336 missing. Man, that's a stalemate there.
Right.
The Encyclopedia Arkansas gives slightly different casualty numbers: 175 killed, 808 wounded, 250 missing for the Union. 204 killed, 872 wounded, 407 missing for Confederates. Who cares? Confederate forces suffered from severe demoralization and lost many conscript soldiers during and after the campaign to desertion. They're like, fuck this. You guys send us out there with freaking shotguns.
Faulty-ass weapons.
We don't even have bayonets. You give us like 8 shells apiece. What are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with that?
The Confederates were forced to leave many of their dead on the field and had to pile the bodies into heaps and surround them with makeshift barriers to keep feral pigs from eating the corpses.
Jeez.
The retreat of the Confederate forces from the field gave Union forces control of northwestern Arkansas. December 23rd, Blunt learned that Schofield was on his way to rejoin the army and take overall command. He's like, fuck. Blunt and Heron decided to attempt one last strike at Hindman's Confederate army before Schofield, who was concerned about the potential of Holmes reinforcing the Confederates' army, arrived.
All right.
Hindman had made his camp in the vicinity of Van Buren, Arkansas, and Blunt and Heron reached Van Buren on December 29th. And we'll get to that battle coming up in December 29th, obviously.
Some of the battlefield area is preserved in Prairie Grove Battlefield State Park, 10 miles from Fayetteville, Arkansas. State Park contains over 900 acres of the battlefield. Civil War Trust and its partners have acquired and preserved 351 acres of the battlefield. The site is listed National Register of Historic Places in 1970.
Good for them.
Right.
Brings us to our last battle of the episode. And right before Fredericksburg, we got the Battle of Hartsville. This one's going in Tennessee, northern Tennessee. It was the opening of the Stones River Campaign, which was started in early November 1862 when Union Major General William S. Rosecrans moved his army of the Cumberland southeast from Nashville towards Murfreesboro, which will have the second battle of Murfreesboro coming up as well. Confederate General Braxton Bragg, commanding the Army of Tennessee, had retreated there after his defeat at the Battle of Perryville, which we just did. Bragg ordered Colonel John Hunt Morgan to move north with his cavalry and operate along Rosecrans' lines of communications to prevent him from foraging for supplies north of Nashville.
Okay.
The action at Hartsville, a crossing point on the Cumberland River about 40 miles upstream from Nashville, north of Murfreesboro, was an incident in Morgan's raid to the north before Rosecrans had the bulk of his infantry forces on the move.
All right.
Okay.
Guarding the river, crossing at Hartsville, was the 39th Brigade, 14th Corps, Army of the Cumberland, consisting of 106th Ohio, 108th Ohio, and 104th Illinois Infantries, and the 2nd Indiana Cavalry. The brigade was commanded by Colonel Absalom Moore. Under the cover of darkness, Morgan crossed the river in the early morning of December 7th, 1862, with about 13 hundo. And they're all mainly Kentuckians. He was outnumbered by 1,000 troops by the Union Brigade. So they had 2,300.
Right.
Another Union force, 3 times that size, was encamped 9 miles away at Castellian Springs. That's a hell of a name.
Italian Castellian.
Right. Cheap shade speedscape.
Right.
Close enough to hear the guns, but too far away to take part. You're like, look at those suckers.
Well, Morgan's attack took the Union camp by surprise. One account indicates the Confederates were able to get past the picket line by wearing blue uniforms, while another says they wore civilian clothes and posed as refugees.
Right.
The attack began at 6:45 a.m. with a simultaneous artillery bombardment and an infantry attack, while the cavalry struck the flanks and rear. One of Moore's units broke and ran after an hour, which caused confusion and helped force the Federals to fall back.
Oh, shit.
By 8:30 a.m., the Confederates had surrounded the Union soldiers, convincing Colonel Moore to surrender.
Oh, shit. These guys probably thinking they're so bad.
Right.
You so bad. You ain't so bad. The Union 75th Indiana Regiment was camped about 8 or 9 miles away at the Castellian Springs, as we said. They marched to Hartsville after hearing cannons firing in the distance. Their advance was hesitant because they may have encountered the rear guard of Morgan's cavalry. They reached the battlefield to find Union and Confederate casualties abandoned in the snow. The Union forces had already been defeated by Morgan's combined light infantry, light artillery, and cavalry.
Right.
Some of Morgan's men were barefooted and inadequately clothed. They helped themselves to the Union supplies of shoes and filled several wagons with supplies. Nice. Reports gave the number of dead and wounded as about 200 combined.
Right. Well, Basil W. Duke, the Confederate field commander, wrote that 15 Confederate soldiers, frozen so stiff, were left behind along with other wounded.
Damn.
The Union wounded were also left behind, while the 2004 prisoners taken were marched south to Lebanon. Duke wrote that the Confederates knew of the Union strength and even where they were deployed. Morgan thus took the precaution of deploying Quirk's scouts and Kluke's regiment to impede any Union pursuit.
Right.
The Confederates stepped up the pace, and some Union prisoners were forced to wade the Cumberland River or one of the smaller creeks.
Okay.
Well, it's cold.
All right. Morgan inflicted 58 Union casualties. The cost of 139 Confederate. However, he also left the battlefield with 1,844 Union prisoners. Damn. And a wagon train heavily loaded with captured equipment and supplies. Look at that shit. General Joseph E. Johnston, who was an overall commander of the Confederate forces in the Western Theater, called this a brilliant feat and recommended that Morgan be appointed Brigadier General immediately. President Jefferson Davis happened to be in the vicinity at Murfreesboro and promoted Morgan in person when he arrived.
Oh, nice.
The action at Hartsville foreshadowed the Confederate cavalry raids by Nathan Bedford Forrest into West Tennessee, December 1862 to January 1863, and by Morgan into Kentucky from December 1862 to January 1863. Rosecrans arrived in Murfreesboro on 19th December, setting the stage for the Battle of Stones River.
Yes, sir, it did.
Yeah, that's like a little morale boost for the Confederates there, eh? Got some shoes and shit. Look at them.
Yep. Yeah, the Stones River is the second Battle of Murfreesboro, so we got that coming up. Also the Battle of Van Buren, where these guys are hiding out all day.
Right. Parker's Crossroads. Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, next week, Battle of Fredericksburg. December
spaghetti.
13th.
Dude, how many people died on Pearl Harbor Day?
Huh?
How many people died on Pearl Harbor Day?
In Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
I don't know, like 1,000 something?
Like thousands?
1,000
I think
something?
it was thousands.
403 U.S.
I was going to say. Maybe.
Why?
Because December 7th and Civil War, there was a lot of battles going on. How many people died that day?
Not a lot.
At least 500.
Well, Fredericksburg, December 13th, about 2,000 were killed overall between both armies, so.
Damn, dude, Union got their ass kicked.
The fuck did.
Dude, 12,600 fucking casualties. Holy shit. How?
And they had 114,000 engaged to 72,500 engaged for the Confederates.
Oh, my. Way outnumbered them and got their asses handed to them. How?
That's what Robert E. Lee does. And he had Burnside leading the Union. He sucked, so.
Fucking Burnside, that guy.
Yeah, that'll be next episode. We got a long one. This is going to be a nice one. A lot of casualties, a lot of stuff going on in that. And that's what we'll be back for next week. Fredericksburg. In the meantime, go to patreon.com/bangdane. Get all of these episodes ad-free, as well as This Week in Sports History and Outlaws and Gunslingers. Speaking of Outlaws and Gunslingers, I think this week's episode is going to be about some dude named Floyd Allen gets into a little courthouse altercation.
Stupid.
And he's an
The
idiot.
dumbest shooting I've ever seen in my life.
All because he didn't want to go to jail for 1 year and said he gets sentenced to execution after this shootout. So what an idiot that guy was.
Their whole family was.
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
And then This Week in Sports History, obviously, and manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. Use the code TrueCrime for all that over there, manscaped.com. And we're back for Fredericksburg next week. We are the Mouth of Michiganders with
Bang Dang.